Hello everyone, welcome to Ferdinand tutorials. In this video, our topic is taxonomy and binomial nomenclature. That's what we'll be focusing in this class. Now under this, we'll be looking at the common names and scientific names of plants, looking at taxonomic evidences, stages of taxonomy or floristic studies. Now in our last class, we introduced taxonomy and then we looked at the 4 taxonomic fundamentals, where we looked at the identification, we looked at characterization, looked at classification, and the last one, which is naming. We say that every aspect of taxonomy depend on these fundamentals. It's these fundamentals that help us to understand what taxonomy is all about. So in that case, we want to look at binomial nomenclature. Now remember that when you hear about binomial is 2, and then when you hear about nomenclature, it's actually a system of assigning a name. Are we together? It's not just giving a name, assigning both the system of giving that name and the system of governing the given ability of that name. That's what we're looking at in nomenclature. Now, when we are talking about common and scientific name, what do you understand by common and scientific name? Now remember that common name simply means a name that the layman know the plant as, and then scientific name is the name that was given to a plant. And the understanding of the common and scientific name helps us to group and classify plants. In common name, we can call common name maize plant. A common name of this particular plant is maize plant. We can have maize plant. We can have a common name, mimosa plant or sensitive plant. Mimosa plant. These are common names of plants. We can also have a common name of maybe purple yam. We can have white yam. All these are common names. Now, according to Lane, now he gave us 7 systems of classifying organism or of giving a name to a particular plant scientifically. He said that we must start first with the kingdom of that plant, and then we start with what we call the division. Had it been for animal, we have talked about phylum, but since it's plant, it's division. Now from division we move to class. From class we have order. From order we have family. From family we have genus. And then from genus we have species. Now I want to say something. These are common names. We will use this understanding to classify scientific name. Common name, I'll go again, is more like a name that is known in a particular location. The name, some common individuals used to identify plants. A layman, a countryman, sees maize and they call it, this is maize plant. But scientifically, we don't call it maize plant. I will tell you why and how. Are we together now? Good. So now, if we are talking about scientific name, we want to assign a scientific name to a particular plant. There are things we look at. We first of all look at the kingdom of that plant, kingdom of that organism. Of course, there are 2 major kingdoms actually, where we have animal kingdom and then plant kingdom. Are we together? So since we're talking about plants now, we're looking at the plant kingdom. Now these are the 2 important parts that help us to assign a scientific name to every plant. Now in every plant we must have what we call the genus name and then the species name or the specific name. While genus name can be seen in 1 or 2 plants, species name is only given to a particular plant. Let's take for instance, in this particular maize plant is Oryza sativa. That's the scientific name, Oryza sativa. And I also want to let you know that when writing scientific name, the genus name comes first before the species name. The genus name starts with capital letter. Oryza is the genus, comes first before the species or specific name. Now the species name comes last, and it starts with the small letter. Are we together? So Oryza sativa. Oryza is the genus, sativa is the species name. Are we together? Now, just as I said that in genus name you can have 2 plants or 3 plants that have the same genus name, but in general cases we only have 1 plant with species name. Are we together? In most cases, that's why we can have under yam, we can have white yam is Dioscorea rotundata. That's the scientific name of white yam. Dioscorea rotundata, small letter, let's not make mistake. Dioscorea rotundata. It starts with capital D as the what? The genus name, small r as the what? As the species name. Now, when we're talking about purple yam can be Dioscorea alata. So you can see that these are two different plants, but they have the same genus name. Are we together? But the species name is what differentiates them. Are we together now? So you can see the genus Dioscorea, genus here Dioscorea rotundata alata. While this is white yam, this is what? Purple yam. So I can go to, maybe this is Nigeria. When I call yam, in Nigeria, what we know as yam is just the white yam. So maybe when I travel to China and then I say I want to eat yam, they can give me purple yam. You see there is difference in the both of them now. But had it been I went to China and then I say I want to eat Dioscorea rotundata, come on, they'll give me white yam. Are we together? And then if I go there, I say I want to eat Dioscorea alata, they'll give me purple yam. They're not the same thing. But when I say yam, there are different species of yam. Different species of yam, not the same. Are we together? That's why, common names are ambiguous. Common name makes it difficult for us to understand, this taxonomy. That's why when we are studying taxonomy, we usually use what? The binomial name, binomial nomenclature, so that we understand the scientific name. And in that binomial nomenclature, we say there are two names. That two names is derived from the species and the genus. So that's what makes up the what? The binomial nomenclature. So we have the genus name and the species name. All these two makes up what? Scientific name, which helps us to understand what? Binomial, binomial nomenclature. I don't know if that makes sense. So this is it. We also have mimosa plant. Mimosa plant, also known as the sensitive plant, also called touch and die by some persons. The scientific name or the botanical name, we have capital M, that the genus name starts first, mimosa, the small letter which is the species name, pundica. Are we there now? That's it. And also we have, okay, the other day I gave you an assignment. I said, what is the botanical name of moss plant? And I saw some persons answered it in the comment section. I was so glad. I was happy. Some of you were like, sir, what is this? What is this? And for those of you that answered it, I'm proud. I'm happy. You don't need to get it right for you to, to show that you know what you're doing in class. It simply means that you have the ability to try. And that's what is needed in every life of a student. Okay, now when we talk about moss plants, there are over 250 species of moss plants that exist, in the ecosystem. And the common examples of moss plants, we have, the liverwort, the hornwort. Are we together? The mosses, mosses, mosses plant, liverwort. Are we there now? Hornwort. They are the common examples of what? Of moss plants that you know. And then generally we call them bryophytes. Are we together? That's what we call them as a family. So when I asked you that botanical, I wanted you to get a story. I wanted you to show that, okay, I'm not seeing this. I'm not actually understanding this. And that's what I saw some of you did. And I'm happy. So when we're talking about moss plant, they have a general family name or botanical name, which we call what? The bryophyte. So that is that. So we've talked about common name and what? Scientific name. We've talked about, why we don't use common names often. Common names is ambiguous. What we know common name as in Nigeria is not what we might know common name as in, China. When I mention yam here, yam might be white yam in Nigeria, but when I go to China, they can have yam as what? Purple yam. So if I want to eat white yam in China, I will go there and tell them that I need to eat what? Dioscorea rotundata. If I want to study white yam, I will go there and say I want to study, the family. I want to study the behavior of the Dioscorea rotundata and not the behavior of what? Of yam, because there are different species of what? Of yam. I don't know if you're getting what I'm saying. Good. So that is that. We also have, if we start talking about a man, we have what we call Homo sapiens, Homo erectus. All these things are, all these things are scientific name. Homo is the genus, sapien is the species, erectus is the species name. Do you understand? Why both of them have a genus name, they don't have the same what? The same species name. Are we together? So when classifying plants, animals, they might have the same genus name, but they must not have a species name. The species name is what makes it specific. That's why we say species name or what? Specific name. Are we together now? So that is that. Now let's move over to taxonomic evidences. Now we're not talking about taxonomic evidences. We are saying that, taxonomy, while it's an important study, there are other studies that comes together to help you understand more of taxonomy. Are we together? Now some of them we're going to look at biochemistry, we're going to look at the chemistry, we're going to look at geography, we begin to look at genetics, we begin to look at morphology, evolution, cytology, embryology, palynology, ecology, anatomy. Are we together? Because of time, I will not explain all these things. I want this video to be as short as possible. I will not explain all these things. But if you have a question, please do comment, using the comment box. Now, when we are talking about all these taxonomic evidences, just as I said, there is a question they usually ask. They say, explain, why taxonomy is a pedestal science. Okay, let me get that question correct. They say, let me get that question. Give me a minute. Now, they say, taxonomy is a pedestal upon which all biological disciplines is built. Now, what is the reason? From here, it is the unifying and integrating discipline which represents the peak of biological endeavor. I'll go again. Taxonomy is a pedestal upon which all biological disciplines are built because it is the unifying and integrating discipline which represents the peak, highest, P-E-A-K, the highest of biological endeavor. Now, remember that if we begin to look at this taxonomy, pedestal, upon which other, disciplines are built, we are looking at this taxonomy as a model, as, a staircase through which we make other buildings. I don't know if that makes sense. We are looking at it as a foundation upon which, other disciplines are formed, upon which, we can be able to explore that discipline. Now, if we come to biochemistry, in biochemistry, we have what we call carbohydrates, we have proteins, we have enzymes. Now, when we are naming all these, biological components, when we are naming all these, molecular substances, there is what we call naming. We assign name to it. Chemistry, we assign naming. Geography, naming. Genetics, there is no way you can talk about man and woman without naming. Cytology, study of cells, we talk about naming. Now, embryology, we also talk about naming. Ecology, of course, the environment, we're talking about naming. Anatomy, morphology, evolution, all these things are naming. So for us to understand all these things effectively, we need to understand taxonomy. So taxonomy is a pedestal upon which we build other disciplines. I don't know if that makes sense. So that's why we're looking at what as taxonomic evidences. Now, let's look at the stages of taxonomy of floristic study. There are 4 important stages of taxonomic or floristic study. We have number 1, we have exploratory phase. Exploratory. Number 2, we have systematic. Are we there? We have biosystematic. And then we have the last one, encyclopedic. Are we there? Exploratory stage or exploratory phase, systematic stage or phase, biosystematic, and then encyclopedic what? Phase or stage. Now let's look at it one after the other. Now in exploratory phase, we say that this phase involves the collection and subsequent classification from a limited range of herbarium specimens. Remember, when we want to study floristic, in floristic we say flora, small f, flora, and what? Preparation of flora. And then for the first stage of our study is when we're talking about what? Collection of the herbarium specimen. Are we together? The first stage, collection. Don't add any other thing. Let's go there. Now the second one, systematic. The phase where extensive herbarium field and studies of a wide selection of materials of each taxon are carried out. So after collection and subsequent classification, now we need to study to know how we group it, to know the family we arrange it to know the genus we assign that particular plant to. We're talking about naming, and in this naming we're looking at what scientific naming, binomial nomenclature. And then we say that for us to understand binomial nomenclature, there are 4 stages of this study, binomial nomenclature. We need to look at these 4 stages: exploratory, systematic, biosystematic, and encyclopedic. Why the first one, we are trying to identify. Are we together? We are trying to collect and then classify that plant. The second one, we are trying to carry out the specimen, carry out the experiment. So after we've collected the specimen, you understand, we want to run an experiment to know which particular group to assign those specimen into. And the third one is what we call biosystematic. Now, during this phase, detailed genetic and cytological studies are made. So it's not just about studying the systematic. In biosystematic, we are talking about what? Detailed study, not just a shallow study, a beginning study. Beginning study is done here. Now, detailed study is done in the third one. Detailed study, when we begin to look at what's the genetics of this plant, what is the pedigree, where is the pedigree from, how do they behave, why is it that this plant have this particular leaf, why is it that it grows in this particular aspect, why is it a xerophyte, why is it a mesophyte, why is it a hydrophyte. These are things we begin to look at. We carry out a detailed examination of this particular plant. Now, the last one, encyclopedic, we say that data from a wide range of disciplines are assembled in this phase. Now, after this detailed classification, already remember we already have a plan, or we already have a study, or we already have informations that will help us to understand these plants better. Are we together? So after this study, in this particular encyclopedic phase, this is a place where we now use what we've gotten here to carry out a data. Say, okay, this is a particular data. If a plant is tall, it will belong to this group, because in this encyclopedic phase, it's more like a summary of everything that we've done. This is where we begin to assign the name. Now we say, okay, we already have a data prepared already for this classification. So all this plan that we've carried out, that we've run detailed study to, this is where you belong. Maize, you belong to this particular family because you are an annual crop. Mango, you belong to this particular family because you are a perennial crop. We've carried out a detailed study, everything we need to know about the plant. In this encyclopedic phase, this is where we now, use a data that we have already to cross-check our study, and then know when to, group and where to group that particular plant. I don't know if that makes sense. So that is it. And then as we continue, we look at omega and alpha taxonomy. Now, in alpha taxonomy, we say that is a taxonomy that forms the basis of biology. Are we together? And that's why we begin to say that the exploratory and the systematic are usually what? Alpha taxonomy, because they helps us to, they form the basis of biology. Are we together? More like the introductory part. Are we together? Collection and then, a little study. And meanwhile, when we're talking about biosystematic and encyclopedic phase, they are the omega taxonomy. That's the accumulation of all forms of data for good words taxonomic study. So this is a detailed study, and this is having already existing data to cross-check what we've studied. These two, we classify them under what? Omega taxonomy. These are the basics. Exploratory and systematic are under alpha taxonomy. Biosystematic and encyclopedic are under what? Omega taxonomy. Alpha, this is the alpha, and this is the what? Omega. So this is where we'll stop in this video. If you have a question, please do let me know. In our next class, we'll continue with plant anatomy and morphogenesis.